is professional. So it's nice to have willing hands and a lot of folks pulling together. In particular, I want to thank my fellow panelists. And I also want to include CEO Mark Holstein on the panel at the first Mayoral Forum. And I also thank moderator Grace Conley for her patience and wisdom in helping us make these forums happen. Quick reminder that city election is Tuesday, November 7th. There are races for mayor, the at-large council seats, and Ward 4, and there's a non-binding question on the ballot. And now, Attorney Grace Conley, tonight's moderator.
Thank you, Richard. Welcome and good evening. I want to thank again our sponsors, the Daily News, the Greater Newburyport Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and the Greater Newburyport Community Media Hub, NCM Hub, home of PortMedia, for sponsoring tonight's mayoral debate. Our panelists this evening are David Strand, Chairman of the Board of Directors of the Greater Newburyport Chamber of Commerce, Margaret Denner, a student at Newburyport High and member of Newburyport Youth Services, and Richard Lodge, Managing Editor of the Daily News. I want to thank our panelists and, of course, our candidates, Mayor Don Holliday and Councilor Robert Cronin, for their participation. As the moderator, it is my role to ensure that the debate proceeds smoothly in accordance with the agreed-upon rules, so I'm going to take a moment to explain how the debate will run. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to make an opening statement and 3 minutes to make a closing statement. The order of the opening and closing statements has been determined by a flip of the coin. Mayor Holliday will go first with the opening statement and last with the closing statement, and Councilor Cronin will go second with opening and first with closing. The panelists will take turns asking questions of the candidates. One question will be directed to only one of the candidates. All of the other questions will be asked of both candidates. Each candidate will have 90 seconds to answer a question. When a question is asked of only one of the candidate who was not asked the question will have the option of making a 30-second rebuttal. When a question is asked of both candidates, each candidate may take 30 seconds to rebuttal if he or she elects to do so, and then the panelists will move on to the next question. The panelists will alternate the order in which each candidate is asked a question first. The 30-second rebuttal time will not be subtracted from the 90-second response time allotted for each question. The official timekeeper this evening is Chris Johnson from the Chamber of Commerce. He will hold up a sign announcing 30 seconds to indicate when the candidate has 30 seconds remaining and stop when the candidate's allotted time has expired. For rebuttal time, the official timekeeper will only hold up the stop sign to indicate that the time has expired. The candidates are expected to answer the question that is asked by the panelists. In the event that a candidate's answer is not responsive to the question posed, I have been asked as the moderator to redirect the candidate's attention to the question and to request that he or she please answer the question that was asked. The debate will be broadcast live on PortMedia Cable TV. Members of the audience are permitted to take photographs, these without flash, and to record and live stream the event, provided it is done without causing any disruptions or distractions. No political posters or signs have been permitted on the stage behind the candidates. There will be no questions or comments from the audience, and the audience is asked to please hold all applause until the candidates have completed their closing statements and the debate is over. If you haven't already done so, please turn off or silence all of your cell phones. And now, I'll introduce our candidates, which it's my pleasure to do. Each candidate has provided me with a brief biographical statement, which I will read. First, I'll read Councilor Robert Cronin's introduction statement. Bob is a 4-term city councilor and has been chair of public safety and a member of the Budget and Finance Committee for his tenure. Prior public service includes the Harbor Commission and the Jeannie Geiger Crisis Center Board of Directors. Bob and his wife Sue have lived in Newburyport nearly 30 years. Professionally, Bob served a 33-year career in law enforcement in the town of Andover, which culminated in supervising the Middlesex Sheriff's Office Detective Division. Bob is currently Director of Security for the CAS Foundation and owns a local company specializing in boat accident investigation throughout the United States and the Caribbean. Councilor Cronin. Our next candidate is Mayor Donna Holliday. Mayor Holliday is currently serving her third term as mayor. She moved to Newburyport in 1979, where she met her husband Joe Holliday and raised their family. Holliday has placed a major focus on addressing long overdue infrastructure and capital projects, including our schools, while improving our finances and revenues. She has worked tirelessly to improve constituent services and to create greater efficiencies with major technology upgrades. Mayor Holliday holds a Master of Science from Boston University, Master of Education from the University of New Hampshire, and a Juris Doctorate degree from the Massachusetts School of Law. And now, pursuant to the order selected, Mayor Holliday will first with the opening statement.
Thank you to the Daily News, the Chamber of Commerce, and PortMedia for hosting this mayoral debate. And thanks for once again including the youth voice. Good evening to you all in the audience and to all of you watching at home. I moved here in 1979 and fell in love with this city and its people. I know many of you have been here much longer. As longtime residents, you represent the backbone, the memory, and the traditional values of this community. We have asked a lot of you, and you have responded. Many of you listening tonight are relative newcomers to our beautiful city. You may not know the full or recent history, but you know why you moved here. Some of you are empty nesters, others young families with kids in our quality school system. Welcome to our city. We have been through a lot since I entered the mayor's office 7 years ago. Let's not forget, back then our city was in trouble, facing a crisis with our infrastructure and schools and real budget challenges. We have shown that working together, we get things done. We have shown we can manage large capital projects. We have shown that we can manage emergencies as we did on Plum Island. We have also shown we can efficiently deliver everyday services that you expect and pay for. We do all this while keeping a watchful eye on the city's finances and achieving a rare AAA bond rating. The great news is that over the past 7 years, we have faced our challenges. We've made life better for you and, more importantly, for future generations. My campaign is about the countless good things about Newburyport and its people, and about what we have accomplished and what we can do together going forward to build our gains for our seniors, ourselves, our children, and our businesses. There is work to finish and new challenges to face. Thank you for being here this evening and for listening.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilor Cronin.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for attending tonight. I appreciate standing before my neighbors and to have an opportunity to speak about Newburyport. I love this city and I want to make it better. I've spent 8 years on the City Council being independent in every sense of the word. I have collaborated in some way with each councilor with which I have served on issues both large and small. I'm incredibly proud of the work that we have completed: historic preservation, zoning amendments, affordability. I have served in the Budget and Finance Committee for my tenure and feel that my work has made the city a better place, and I'm more than ready to be your mayor. My priorities are clear, simple, and are all about core services. Our neighborhoods, the places we call home, have many, many needs. These things I have spent 8 years working on from the City Council perspective. As mayor, I will jumpstart infrastructure repair, such as streets and sidewalks, by allocating more funds. Funds available by not investing in bad or poorly vetted projects. This can and will provide hundreds of thousands of dollars in needed repair monies. Schools are the bedrock of any great city. We have good schools. Now is the time to make them great. This means a focus on enhanced, innovative funding, energizing school councils and parent-driven initiatives, and tuning every decision to meet our strategic plan. Working with school committee collaboratively, I believe we can bring this vision to fruition. Affordability isn't just the cost of housing. It is a combination of property taxes, water and sewer rates, fees, and more. We must make it a priority to keep Newburyport affordable as we move forward. We can do this as we prioritize with proper planning and accountability. We need to retain homes for our seniors and make certain our children could raise their families here. Together we can move forward and chart a new course for Newburyport. Thank you all.
Thank you, Councilor Cronin. And now, debate begins. So when we go to the questions, I would ask that you please withhold your applause so that we can continue moving because there are a lot of questions. Thank you. And for the first question of the debate, I turn to panelist Richard Lodge, Managing Editor of the Daily News.
Thank you, Grace. And I want to give a tip of the hat to a lot of readers who submitted a lot of questions that we boiled down into this mix tonight. First question, we're going to talk about parking and infrastructure. And the question is for you, Councilor Cronin. If elected, will you attempt to put stops to the building of a garage on the corner of Tipton Street? And if so, how will you rationalize what will be by January millions of dollars invested in completing the garage? And how will you get the cars off the waterfront?
Thank you. Great opening question. It's many faceted. As of today, we don't own the property. It's going to be an interesting challenge to find out on January 1st or thereabouts where we are in this process. Certainly, as a mayor, I am not going to fill in a hole that has been dug for a foundation, and I probably can't cancel contracts or cancel orders for steel and concrete. With that being said, between now and January 1st, we have a non-binding referendum. That is going to be a telling decision for both City Council and the current administration. Moreover, we haven't received one bid yet. If the bids are over our estimate, this comes back to City Council. So there's several bars that we have to jump through before we get to that point. As far as parking, taking parking off the waterfront, we can do that right now. If we purchase this property, we can make a surface lot. A surface lot could be between 60 and 80 cars, depending on how it's landscaped. We aren't going to lose parking around the parking facility. And as I sit here today, I have still not seen one written proposal referring to the 45 spaces that are supposed to be for the MVRTA.
Thank you, Councilor.
Mayor Holliday, if you would like to make a 30-second rebuttal, you may.
I think it's important to realize that we have invested close to $1 million at this point, and moving forward with the garage project has been something we've debated for 3 decades. For us to stop at this point, we would lose over $1 million. I think it's really important. If we just do a surface lot, the difference between $34,000 a space in the intermodal facility garage versus $68,000 per space on a surface lot, and we still wouldn't get the cars off the waterfront.
Thank you, Mayor Holliday. This question is still on the topic of parking garage and infrastructure, and it's directed to you, Mayor Holliday. If the non-binding vote on November 7th about the garage is something close to a 2/3 majority against it, what will you do?
It's a non-binding question, and I think it's unfortunate that we are even still having this conversation about whether or not to build a garage or not. As I said, this is something that we have advanced for 3 decades in terms of working, and the whole point of this was so that we can finally build the park on the waterfront and remove over 100 cars from the waterfront park, that waterfront area. I think that we need to work with the council, do a little more outreach to the public if we do end up with that large of a vote against the garage, but I'm not hearing that as I'm walking across this community and talking to residents in each of the wards. Certainly there are people who aren't in favor of this. People are concerned about the costs, but as I have said over and over again, the garage will be paid for by $6.5 million in federal and state earmarks and only from paid parking revenues.
Councilor Cronin, you have 30 seconds to rebut if you'd like to do so.
Thank you. We currently have a very robust parking system, parking program. This is going to be gutted, and we are going to stagnate our downtown if we build this parking garage. The problem is, at some point, you cannot continue to throw good money after bad. We have to take a hard look at this. We have to take a hard look at the numbers and not fantasy numbers that were just provided. We have to look at this parking program. Thank you.
Questions have been raised about excessive city spending on infrastructure projects. What's your response to that, and where do sidewalks fall in your priority list?
Thank you. When I took office 7 years ago, our city was in real trouble. Our schools were in the Bresnahan School, 38% of our kids were being educated in moldy trailers hanging off the schools. We had buckets catching water out of the ceilings at the Nock Middle School, just for a few examples. We had failing infrastructure under our roads and streets, and we had been trying since 1968 to site a senior community center. These are just to name a few of the projects that we've worked on. The only projects that have been on the backs of taxpayers have been those that you voted for, the 2 school projects and the senior community center. And that was part of that debt exclusion vote. All of the other projects we have been able to manage within our existing operating budget. And the rule of thumb, the standard financial best practice, if you will, is that you do not want to get into debt in your operating budget beyond 10 to 12%. Our debt rate now is under 8%. We needed to move forward on these projects, the field projects, the school projects, the senior community center, as well as taking care of infrastructure underground, our water plant, and our wastewater plant. These were critical needs that had to be addressed.
Councilor Cronin, I think you get to respond to that same question.
Okay, could you just please repeat it?
Sure, if you don't mind. Questions have been raised about excessive city spending on infrastructure projects. What's your response to that? And where do sidewalks fall on your priority list?
Sidewalks are part of a core priority of refocusing on the neighborhoods. The situation we are in right now is in the last 8 years, taxes are up 38% in Newburyport. Amesbury has only gone up 17%, and the state average is 26%. In 2009, comparing us to our neighbors across the river, Amesbury was ranked 59th in taxes, Newburyport was 68. Amesbury and Newburyport flipped in 2014. We are now ranked at 61st, Amesbury at 68, and currently we sit at 57 on the 57th of the most taxed cities in Massachusetts. Our debt service has jumped from $3.6 million in 2010 to $8.5 million per year today. People are voicing concerns. We can move forward. We can move forward by vetting good projects, managing good projects, finishing good projects, but we cannot continue to do projects 2 and 3 times, like moving dirt at the rail trail, like the roundabout. We must be better in our project management, and with the savings that we have, we can create a better accounting of sidewalks and streets.
Mayor Holliday, you have 30 seconds for rebuttal if you'd like to do so.
The other thing that I would like to point out, I'm sure we will get to discussion further on about taxes, and I think that that's an important topic for tonight, but the other thing that I think was really important is that my administration has brought in close to $100 million in grant funds to help fund these capital projects, as well as increases in our debt service, but I don't see that $8 million in debt service on almost a $70 million budget is that extraordinary. What would you pull away? The wastewater treatment plant? The water plant?
Councilor Cronin, you have 30 seconds for rebuttal if you'd like to do so.
Seniors are now actually very concerned about living here in Newburyport. Each day when I go out knocking on doors, I'm hearing citizens really concerned about being able to stay in their homes. We look for younger families to move into Newburyport from other places. We look at sons and daughters that want to stay here in Newburyport and raise their families. That's what I'm talking about.
Thank you, Councilor.
Okay, we're going to, these questions will be for both of you, and we're going to touch on some waterside issues. Councilor Cronin, this to you. What will your posture and position be as the voters' representative as you deal with New England development in the years ahead?
I'm disappointed with New England development right now. The project that they have provided the city with plans is, quite frankly, self-serving. It does not provide the citizens of Newburyport with any level of good relief or providing anything at all that helps the city of Newburyport. They're taking everything. It's too tall. It's too dense. There's not enough parking. We have to look at that project and make it look like perhaps a seaport village with cobblestone and brick, not warehouses that look like Boston. We want to make it look like part of Newburyport, the Newburyport brand, something that Newburyport residents can look at and embrace. We don't want this to be the cornerstone of Newburyport that dwarfs the rest of our historic downtown, that dwarfs our beautiful waterfront, that takes away the charm and the beauty of what Newburyport is. I want Newburyport Development to come to us with a plan that is workable for the citizens of Newburyport, that provides help for the citizens of Newburyport and not just for themselves.
Mayor Holliday, you have 90 seconds as well to answer this question.
Thank you. New England Development's ownership of Waterfront West and their proposed development will forever change the property between the Black Cow and Michael's Harborside. They need zoning relief, which is very fortunate because it gives us leverage in terms of negotiating with them. At this juncture, 8 large buildings are too tall, too dense. They are required to have all parking on site. We need to be sure that the amenities through Chapter 90, which is when you have access to the water, that these amenities are appropriate and something that will benefit our community. We have a lot of work going ahead, and I ask everyone in this audience and everyone at home to stay vigilant, to stay engaged. We need to work on these projects together to ensure whatever the result is something we can all live with. But what concerns me is that Councilor Cronin has recused himself from all votes relating to this project. So how are you going to move forward in addressing this?
Councilor Cronin, you have 30 seconds for rebuttal.
Thank you. First off, I would like to make sure the hotel is front-loaded in this project because we need a hotel downtown. Chapter 91, which is the state law for fishing, fouling, navigating, and filled title and access, is not an accommodation for the city of Newburyport, but rather a state law. We still need accommodation. There is nothing in front of me right now as a city councilor to recuse myself from. there is nothing as a mayor that I will recuse myself from.
Thank you, Councilor Cronin. Mayor Holliday, you also have 30 seconds to rebut if you'd like to.
Again, I emphasize the fact that this is so important for our community. We've seen some of the conceptual designs. We've had some meetings with New England Development. They're asking a couple city councilors and members of the planning board to come into a charrette meeting at New England Development in a couple weeks where we can begin to really push back and work on articulation of these buildings and ensure that there's different sizes, different facades, so that it does really match and work with the downtown.
Thank you, Mayor Holliday. Now the next question.
While there is much focus on Waterfront West, what is your vision for the property on the waterfront we all call Oldies, also currently owned by New England Development? This is for
Mayor Holliday first.
I'm sorry, I'm not understanding. Can you say the question again? Are we talking about the Waterfront Trust?
What is your vision for Oldies?
I'm sorry, Oldies.
Oldies, the antique marketplace.
Sure. Thank you.
By New England Development.
They have proposed at one point a hotel, another point maybe a Whole Foods. We haven't seen any concrete plans at this point because their emphasis right now is on the Waterfront West development. Certainly they do own that property. I think all of us really like Oldies, but I know that better water views would be something that we would love to see down there instead of this building. But until we have something that we can really respond to, a concept that they put forward, then at this point it's all conjecture. But right now I know that they're focusing on Waterfront West.
Councilor Cronin?
Yes, thank you. Oldies was in fact going to be a hotel at one point, and that process was defeated by an abutter. From that time, there have been a couple of other suggestions, but Oldies is pretty much laid dormant in the last 7 to 10 years and really hasn't been part of any grand scheme. They have improved the marina right there, and they have improved some outbuildings right there, but as far as Oldies itself, there's been no conversation.
Mayor Holliday, you have 30 seconds to rebut if you'd like to do so.
I think we've talked about Oldies, and since we don't have a lot of information to work on at this point, I think we could move on.
Next question.
This is for Councilor Cronin first. Why should a resident of Plum Island vote for you over your opponent? And do you support beach scraping and beach sand replenishment on Plum Island?
Yes. One, of course they should vote for me. And secondly, there are certainly neighborhood issues. When I say neighborhood, I'm talking about the neighborhood of Plum Island. Yes, they are isolated, and yes, sometimes they feel like second-class citizens. As second-class citizens, that has to change. They have to be engaged like the rest of the community. I would certainly support the efforts of the Department of Conservation and Recreation, the Merrimack Valley Beach Alliance, Merrimack River Beach Alliance, and the Army Corps of Engineers that are trying to deal with the issues associated with a barrier island. Beach scraping is an option, unfortunately, as far as CZM is concerned, Coastal Zone Management, Massachusetts version. It is illegal to do that. We have not seen any permits for it. Some of that has been done in violation in Newbury, and there's been no enforcement action. I'm completely in favor of beach replenishment with sand from or offshore dumping from the Piscataqua River, sand from dredging up there, and onshore deposits of sand from dredging from the Merrimack River. Those two options are in parallel.
Mayor Holliday, you also have 90 seconds to answer the question.
Thank you. Plum Island is a beautiful asset to our city. Yes, it comes with challenges, but we're working with the Merrimack River Beach Alliance. We have been for 8 or 9 years. We've been successful in delegation going to Washington, D.C., and we're able to secure $20 million for repair of the jetties. With the repair of the jetties has come new challenges with beach erosion. We have met with DEP, Department of Environmental Protection, and we've looked at beach scraping. It was a procedure that was done many years ago, and the residents have asked DEP to look at it again. I don't think definitive decisions have been made if they will allow that to go forward, but at this juncture, the Newbury side of Plum Island has not been faced with the kinds of erosions that we're seeing off of North Reservation Terrace. Dredging is one of the options that we're looking at, and I'm very pleased that Governor Baker and Secretary Ash have put together a new program for dredging, and so we're looking at that also as a means of putting additional sand. We've been working with the Conservation Commission, Coastal Zone Management, the Sandy Grant, and doing dune plantings, and really are concerned about the loss of the primary dune there. We're looking at a way to generate additional revenue by adding some additional funds to parking on Plum Island, so that can go into a dune nourishment fund. So we have to continue being diligent and work to address these issues on Plum Island.
Councilor Cronin, do you have any rebuttal?
Yes, just one quick point that we've been reactive on Plum Island for far too long. We have to be proactive. We have to protect our homes out there, people's homes. We have to protect our infrastructure, which is our water and sewer. These are things that we have to come up with our partners at the state and federal level with a proactive plan. We are doing dune renourishment, especially with UNH. They're coming out and assisting with dune replanting of grass, and also we put out Moby mats.
Mayor Holliday, you have an additional 30 seconds if you'd like to rebut.
The neighborhood on Plum Island is very active, and they have come together and have done a lot of work with our Conservation Commission, with the people who are working on the Sandy Grant, which is from U.S. Fish and Wildlife. And so they have been working on dune and grass plantings. We have a lot of work. We have to be very diligent there. It's hard to be proactive because you don't always know what is going to happen.
In the area of leadership, a question for you, Mayor Holliday. How would you rate yourself as a manager of people and a manager of finances?
It's a great question. I think that one of the biggest challenges of being a leader of a city is to put a strong leadership team together to work with you. And that's something that I'm very proud of what we've done. And I've said this many times, you can be proud as citizens of Newburyport, you can be very, very proud of the team that run each and every one of our departments. I could reach out to any one of them at 2 o'clock in the morning if they were needed. They would be here because of their professionalism, their commitment, and support to the city of Newburyport. So bringing a team of people together like that, I would give myself high marks for leadership in that direction. I've also been able to lead our city through a series of major capital and critical projects within the city. And when you look at finances, I don't think there's any question. First time in the history of Newburyport, we have received a AAA bond rating. That is not easy to attain. In addition, we are in our 6th year of receiving from the Government Finance Officers Association, a renowned organization in North America that oversees government finance. We have received a Budget Distinction Award. Our finances are strong, and I'm pleased with the finance team we have put together, and I will take credit for moving our city forward in a very strong way in terms of our finances.
Councilor Cronin, you have 90 seconds to answer the same question.
30 seconds? 90, thank you.
90.
I have worked in municipal and state government, including my time on the city council, for over 36 years. I have worked in municipal government and state government. I have, as a law enforcement professional, been in charge of teams of men and women as they've been placed in harm's way. I can manage. And I can manage by leading from the front and leading from the side, because sometimes a manager has to understand when to step a little bit to the side to allow somebody that may be more qualified, such as a DPS director or a fire chief or whatever, to take the lead. But you have to stand there shoulder to shoulder with that person. You have to stand there and help that other manager manage, and also to stand there to take the heat if something goes wrong. I've been on budget and finance for the 8 years. I am proud to have been in the budget process with the City of Newburyport for 8 years. And while we have a AAA bond rating, and while the mayor and her team has done an exemplary job, she always forgets the component that the City Council in the City of Newburyport is part of that team. And we, as a City Council, have also achieved that AAA bond rating.
Mayor Holliday, would you like 30 seconds to rebuttal?
Of course. There's never, having been on the City Council, Chair of Budget and Finance, I always am respectful of the team that we have together with the City Council. This year, for the first time, they did not cut $1 out of the FY18 budget. And I'm very grateful for them for doing that, and also their incredible due diligence and review of our budget. I'm also very pleased with the work that we've been able to do with school financing.
Councilor Cronin, you may also take 30 seconds to rebut if you'd like.
Thank you. Yes, it is excellent to point out that we didn't cut any money out of this year's budget. And the reason we didn't cut any money out of this year's budget is we cut money out of the budget 2 years ago, and we made strong cuts. And when the budget came in this year, the budget reflected the cuts from the year before. The city learned that the City Council was looking at excess and unspent money. So yes, the budget was uncut. It was cut the year before and strongly cut.
Thank you. Next question.
This question is staying on the topic of leadership, and this is to Councilor Cronin. What's your view on how the relationship between the mayor and the City Council works best to serve voters?
It serves best when we communicate. Communication is a two-way street. The City Council does not work for the mayor, and the mayor does not work for the City Council. We are part of the system of checks and balances that occur in governance. That does not mean that we cannot collaboratively work together on projects or as a team. But to do that, we need information, we need a two-way street, and we need cooperation. And that goes in both ways. There are times when the council may have a better idea. There may be times when the council does not have a better idea. But the collaboration between both branches of government is needed. And when I was on the General Government Committee, which is a subcommittee of the City Council, and I was on it for 2 years, the mayor is the chair. We did not meet once. We did not meet once. And that is problematic. We have to communicate. And communication, as I said, goes both ways.
Mayor Holliday, you also have 90 seconds to answer the same question.
Thank you. This question is about communication. When I took office, we were in the dark ages. We were working off of a Windows 97 platform in 2010. I could not open any documents, hardly any documents. We had a 30-year-old phone system that died when it was raining. And the mayor was not allowed in council chambers unless invited in by council. Yet I still took the opportunity every Sunday night before a city council meeting to send every councilor an update on everything we had been working on. Now with the change in the charter, I am in front of the council before every meeting, and I provide them with detailed information about what's been going on in the city. That's a level of communication and transparency that has never existed before in the city. In regards to general government, it's a subcommittee of the City Council. If nothing is sent to general government, then there is no reason for that subcommittee to meet. We've met a few times this year because we've had items sent to general government. But if nothing is sent to the subcommittee, then there's no reason for that subcommittee to meet.
Councilor Cronin, you may take 30 seconds to rebut if you wish to do so.
Just a very brief comment, and that is, I'm not sitting up here talking about computers or answering machines at City Hall, which is a story for another day. I am talking about communication between branches of government, and the communication between those branches of government is simply broken.
Mayor Holliday, you also have 30 seconds to rebut.
I totally disagree. As I said, we have never had a level of communication since I have been in office, being able to come before the council every 2 weeks before their city council meeting and provide them with a written update of everything we've been working on. In addition, that information is posted on a city blog for everyone to read, and then it's pushed to Facebook. We have more transparency and more communication than we have ever had between the mayor's office and the city council. I can remember being on the city council and probably receiving maybe 5 emails in a given year.
Thank you. Now the next question is from Ms. Margaret Denner.
This is for the mayor first. Why should I vote for you?
Are you 18? Wonderful. I had to check. Margaret, I think you should vote for me because I think that if you look back over the last 8 years of what has been accomplished in this city, particularly look at what we've accomplished for the schools. The budget has increased 26%. We have new buildings, we have new programs, we have new partnerships with higher ed. We have some dual credit, but we need to do more for that to help students graduate from high school and have some college credit when they go. We have internships. We've improved our robotics labs, STEM labs. We've done so much for the schools. And as you are coming out of the school system, you can see and benefit from all of that work that we've done. In addition, we've developed a strategic plan that is a workable, actionable plan that we've never had before in the schools. We used to have these binders that would sit up collecting dust somewhere. These now is a plan that can be absolutely operationalized between administration and down into the classrooms. So we're all working together to advance our schools. And I think that's really important for our youth because as they move forward into college or careers, we need to give them a really solid foundation. And I believe we've made great advances in that area. So vote for me.
Thank you. Tough question, because if I knocked on your door and I said, "Hi, Margaret," I would be looking at you and I'd ask you, what's on your mind? What do you think Newburyport should be? Where do you think Newburyport should go? How would you like to make Newburyport better? Because, you see, as mayor, I'm not running the city. I am running the city for you. That's what I'm doing. And so I would like to know, and in this forum we can't do it obviously, but I would like to know if schools were your issue, or if affordability was your issue. Are you going to go away to school and want to come back and have a family or have your professional life in Newburyport? That's as important to me as the schools. Do you need sidewalks in your neighborhood? Do you need better streets? Do you need rail trails and parks and parking? We need to I need your vote, but I need your vote not only for the schools, I need your vote because you're going to want to live here, I hope, for the rest of your life. And that is important to me. So, repeating, I would come to your door and ask what you thought.
Mayor Holliday, would you like 30 seconds to rebut?
Margaret, you might decide after you finish college to come back here, and I think it would be wonderful if you did. But before then, as you are faced with casting your ballot on November 7th, I asked you to step back. So you looked at the schools, we've talked about the schools in terms of what has been accomplished, but also look at what's been accomplished across Newburyport. Certainly we have more work to do with our roads and sidewalks, but this, I don't know if you play sports, but soccer fields, the multi-turf field, we've increased all of the fields, and I think that's been really important also for our athletes.
Councilor Cronin, would you like 30 seconds to rebut?
Just my last statement, it's all about quality of life, experience, your experience as a student, growing up through perhaps the Brez, this school, up to the high school, perhaps commuting to college, perhaps going away, moving back, coming back to visit family. But it's all about the entire community, and you can't have just one thing without the entire community. So vote for me on November 7th.
Thank you. Now in the area of economic development and business, this is a question first for you, Councilor Cronin. What's your vision for the future of tourism in Newburyport? And does it include building a new visitor cultural center on or near the water?
First and foremost, with development, Newburyport needs not one but 2 hotels. We need the hotel we spoke about earlier at Waterfront West, at NED, a boutique-style hotel that is on the waterfront that will attract tourists that are coming to look at Newburyport, visit Newburyport, and enjoy Newburyport. We also need a business-style hotel at or near the business park. Not only for businesses, but maybe a more affordable component that tourists can use, also that visitors that may be coming for a graduation or a wedding or a family event can use. So we need 2 hotels, 2 style hotels. We need a visitors center somewhere. In my administration, it is certainly not going to be on our open waterfront. The open waterfront is there for everybody to enjoy. I have to steal a line from Councilor Devlin the other night. Your smartphone in your back pocket is going to be your visitor center of the future. What we need is a small footprint, modern bathroom facility on the waterfront that people can use with perhaps a little round rack or kiosk for some brochures.
Mayor Holliday, you also have 90 seconds to answer this question.
Thank you. Newburyport is on the map. We used to be the city that everyone passed on 95 heading to Portsmouth or Portland, and all of a sudden, over the last many years, our city is in demand. We have tourists coming into our city in droves that we haven't seen before. We're doing activities and events like the tall ships that are bringing people in to support our economic base, our small businesses, our retailers, our shops, and this is really vital for the economic growth and vitality of our city. What do we continue to do to support tourists? I think our traffic studies are really important. I believe the garage is really important. We need to be able to ensure that people can get in and out of our city and have ample places to park. I think that that's really important, which is part of the reason why we've been talking about the garage. We need to get the cars off the waterfront. We need to build an additional park and open space that will draw tourists there too, which is really important for the central waterfront to help our whale watches and other amenities on the river so that people are using those resources and supporting those businesses, as well as spending time in our small boutiques and shops and restaurants and enjoying all of the beauty of our historic downtown.
Councilor Cronin, would you like to take 30 seconds?
Certainly. When we talk about traffic studies for the downtown, the first thing that we have to look at is an efficient way to get people off Merrimack Street. Living in the quasi-downtown area, I see traffic on a nice day backed up from the Bullnose in the downtown past Kent Street on a normal basis. We have to address that. Traffic studies show that that area of town is a level F. It can't get any worse. We can't continue to try to put everything in one little area like a parking garage.
Mayor Holliday, you may also have 30 seconds of rebuttal.
Thank you. We are working with John Burke, again, who helped us set up our paid parking downtown. We have people involved with our garage project in terms of traffic study. We also require Waterfront West to do an extensive traffic study. The ramp coming off of Route 1 to Merrimack Street has been on the Transportation Improvement Fund program by the state for many years. There's no funding attached to it yet, but we need to continue to advocate for that. We can get the traffic right in downtown.
Thank you. This is still on the topic of economic development and business, and this is for Mayor Holliday. Can you offer voters a three-point plan on how you improve our local economy, and with what sense of urgency as it regards keeping taxes balanced?
Thank you. Improving our economy, I think we can begin with the first point, looking at our business park. Our business park is a jewel. It was developed in the 60s and created a much needed economic base. It's been tired over the years. We've started to put a little more attention into it, but with so many needs across the city, we've had to prioritize. We've done some paving. We've done some work in terms of improving the business park, changing the names, new signage. We also are working with the Merrimack Valley Planning Commission in terms of, with this marketing company called Prime, who is putting together a whole new marketing proposal for the business park. But one of the challenges in terms of economic development, which is point 2, is employees. This is a real challenge for the business park in terms of getting qualified people to come in and work for them. I know that one company had to go to Ireland to bring workers in because they could not get the staff. So making sure we can have employees who can work in our restaurants, to work in our business park, in light manufacturing, or whatever piece is really important. And then I think marketing and improving any of the vacancies that we have. And part of that is through the expansion of our work with the Economic Action Committee of the Council, where we sit and look at each of these sectors, whether it's hospitality, manufacturing, small businesses, and find ways to support and enhance those businesses for the economic health of our community.
Councilor Cronin, you also have 90 seconds to answer the question.
For the past 4 years, city councilors have been waiting for a comprehensive zoning rewrite. It hasn't occurred. Councilors have taken action on their own, or our own, and we have rewritten some of the zoning. One of the things that we have done is rewritten the usage in the industrial park, now called the business park. But just changing the name is not good enough. We have to go back and remodel zoning in that area to allow more dense use. It's all by itself out there. It's getting long in the tooth, and we could use taller buildings, better buildings, and I've heard that it's sandy, it's wet, you can't really build up on there. They built in Back Bay, and Back Bay was filled. They build over water. It can be done. It can be done. I plan to use the Office of the Mayor and the Chief Administrative Officer to actively seek not only a hotel, new and fresh businesses out there, and use tax increment financing, TIFs, We've used one in the last 6 or 7 years. We've used a couple others out there. We have to be more aggressive to bring industry and business to our community.
Mayor Holliday, would you like 30 seconds to rebut?
Certainly, I think another piece of that three-point plan I talked about is also generating additional revenues. One of the things that we're looking at, even though we are putting forward a moratorium on marijuana cultivation and its use at this point until the state releases its guidelines, this is an opportunity for us to generate over an additional $1 million that can also help our tax base and will be limited to an area within the business park.
Council Cronin, you may take 30 seconds.
Thank you. One of the other things that we have to do is partner with the chamber and focus that partnership in the industrial park, in the business park. We have to fix roads. We have to fix swales out there. Some have been done, not enough have been done. There are businesses out there that have assisted in putting men on the moon, and they're being flooded out by 10-year storms. We have to address that. We have to address paving. We have to address infrastructure out there.
This is for Councilor Cronin first. What can you promise to do to support the business leaders who contribute much to our city's tax and employment base? And will you continue to support a single tax rate in Newburyport?
At this point, Newburyport cannot sustain a dual tax rate. Usually, you need about 20% of businesses in the tax base to even contemplate that. Before we start doing a split tax rate or even contemplating a split tax rate, we have to work with the chamber, work with existing businesses to modernize, to expand. We have to work with our downtown with more friendly events. I'm not talking festivals. I'm not talking bringing window salesmen in. I'm talking about bringing events that fill restaurants, that bring events that bring people into the shops after they eat, before they eat, and help our brick and mortar partners that are paying a large amount of property tax to the city of Newburyport.
Thank you. I think the best way to support our businesses is, first and foremost, as I mentioned, is the workforce. I know that many of our employees are really struggling with being able to find employees, and this is a problem. One of the issues that is of concern is getting people from east-west in transportation to our city in terms of employment, as opposed to north-south. Our transportation system is much stronger. We can work with Whittier Voc-Tech. They have actually put interns in Arwood, for example, and other places that are in need of building their workforce, but they're having trouble finding appropriate trained, skilled workers in the business park, as well as just filling some of the vacancies that are happening in our restaurants. It's wonderful when we have the influx of our great college students coming back to help cover many jobs during the summer months, which is also our highest tourism season, but we also need to help ensure that we can fulfill their employment needs. And that can be done through our partnerships with higher ed, our partnerships with the Voc-Tech, and working with their particular individual needs and reaching out to our workforce investment boards also.
Council Cronin, would you like 30 seconds to rebut?
Certainly. Our downtown is vibrant. One of the things that our downtown is lacking in is hours of operation. If we want a vibrant downtown, we have to expand the hours of operation of some of our shops, our stores. Our restaurants are good. Our restaurants are filled during the dinner hour. But we have to be able to draw people into town with more than just fine dining.
Mayor Holliday, you may also have 30 seconds.
I think reports from the retailers restaurateurs downtown following this summer have been really, really positive. They talked about their best days ever after Riverfest and the thousands of people who came into our city during the Tall Ships events, as well as Yankee Homecoming. I think we have a tremendous amount of activities that draw tourism to support the economic base of our downtown. I don't think there's any question about that. We have some stores that stay open later, but we do need to expand the hours of operation of some of our retailers downtown.
Now in the area of schools in Newburyport, Mayor Holliday, on one hand we're losing librarians and special education teachers, and on the other we need to stay ahead with modern teaching and technology. How do you suggest we address both concerns?
Richard, you said we're losing librarians. I'm sorry, I couldn't quite hear what you said.
Losing librarians and special ed teachers. And on the other hand, we need to stay ahead with modern teaching and technology.
Thank you. We are not really losing librarians. What we're doing is shifting them into media specialists because our libraries are not what they used to be when some of us were in school many years ago. They have become media centers. And so this is where we see the students, it's become the hub, whether it's the new media center here that we've been able to develop at the Nock Mullen School or the media center at the high school. That is the hub of the high school where all the students are gathering, doing work, doing projects, and so that's where things are evolving. In special education, we're not losing teachers. In fact, we're having to do more and more and more to support the increased needs of students who are entering our school system with special needs. This is one of our greatest challenges because you can't predict what the needs of an individual student is when they come into our school system with special needs. And under federal law, we are required to provide them with an appropriate individual education plan that meets their needs to the fullest. So we have challenges every year, but I think that with the change in our special education leadership over the last couple years, we have made very strong positive advances. We've been able to redesign classrooms, particularly here at Nock Mullen, at the Bresnahan, to provide more equipment and technology for OT, PT, speech. That's so important in meeting the needs of special education students, and we will continue to make these advances.
Question, Councilor Cronin?
Thank you. This is a great time for the city of Newburyport. We are having a turnover of a superintendent, and I wish her well. She did a great job coming in as a crisis manager. But now, with a new superintendent on the horizon and new staff as high school principal and whatnot, we need a school focused on programming and strong in special education. Special education, probably 25% of our students have an IEP. It's all about the programs and the funding. It's about those media specialists. It's about media specialists and reading specialists and fulfilling an IEP in a way that not only conforms with federal law, but gives the student the proper foundation where he or she can move on to the next level, be it in core reading or math or even speech therapy. But that's where our focus has to be at the Newburyport school system.
Mayor Holliday, would you like 30 seconds for rebuttal?
Well, I just would like to ask Councilor Cronin if the superintendent search was so critical. You sent out a citywide mailing on the schools, yet you never mentioned a thing about the superintendent search.
No, I didn't. I didn't because the superintendent search is well publicized. It's going to have parent and community involvement, and I would hope fervently that the school committee itself, the mayor's office, and the city of Newburyport would take the bull by the horns and contact each and every parent and communicate with each and every parent so that they could be notified via the schools for meetings, for gatherings, for everything that has to do with finding a new superintendent, information that I simply do not have.
Thank you.
Staying on the topic of schools, this question is starting with Councilor Cronin. Do you believe it's time to reconsider that upon election as mayor, the mayor also becomes the de facto school committee president?
Can you just repeat that?
Do you believe that it's time to reconsider that upon election as mayor, if you were elected, you would also become the de facto school committee president? Is that something we should consider changing?
Well, we can't, okay, now I understand the question. Yes, currently the mayor is the chair of the Newburyport school system. That is by charter. What the charter can do when it is reviewed is to change that and allow the so-called vice chair of the school committee to take over as school head. I would support that. Right now, I would, if I were the mayor, sit as a member of the school committee, reserve my right as a member of the school committee to take over as chair when appropriate, maybe in an executive session, maybe when there's a personnel issue. However, if the charter did change, if that was the will of the people, the mayor of the city of Newburyport should still sit on the city council, at least as an ex officio, to give input into budget, to give input into direction, but the mayor of the city of Newburyport may be strongly education-based or may not be strongly education-based. So therefore, the way the charter works right now, you don't know if your school committee chair is going to have all the correct tools. I feel comfortable being the school committee chair. However, I want to hear from the true professionals as well.
Mayor Holliday?
I believe it's absolutely critical that the mayor serve as chair of the school committee. This is over 50% of our budget and one of the greatest priorities that a city has is the education of our children. And in order to do that, you have to be part of the process. Right now, the school committee rules allow for the chair, the mayor, to turn the meeting and the agenda setting over to the vice chair. That has been standard practice for many, many years, and it continues to work incredibly well. In terms of rewriting the charter, absolutely not. I think that if you look across the state, in other forms of government, in cities where there is a strong mayor, most of them, if not all, serve as chair of the school committee. It's too important. You need to be able to work with the superintendent who creates the budget, annual budget for the schools, and ensure that we are developing an appropriate budget. And I don't think it really matters whether or not you have the skills when you're running for office. You need to develop the skills. That means attending school committee meetings when you're running for mayor, to attend budget meetings relating to the budget.
Councilor Cronin, you have 30 seconds to rebut.
In 8 years on the city council, 8 years with budget and finance, we have not received one aspirational budget from the school committee. And the reason we don't get an aspirational budget, we should be reaching for the stars with the schools. The reason we don't get an aspirational budget is in this process that those aspirations stop at the chair of the school committee. We need that to go to city council and a public discussion.
Mayor Holliday, you may have 30 seconds to rebut.
Actually, there is an aspirational budget, and if you go back and look, 3 years ago, you had a 3-year aspirational budget from the superintendent that clearly identified this is what we can fund this year, this is what we can fund next year, this is what we're shooting for the following year. We have an aspirational budget. We have tremendous goals tied into this beautiful strategic plan that we will continue to move the process forward. And that information is there, and you certainly could have come to any one of the budget hearings, budget workshops relating to developing the largest budget in our city budget if you chose to.
I have, thank you. I have been to budget meetings.
Oh, excuse me. I think you already had your rebuttal time.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Okay.
So it's the next question, please.
To establish long-term programming in the schools, we need long-term funding. We struggle year to year to do this adequately. What ideas do you have to stabilize funding for long-term education?
That's to me.
Mayor.
Thank you. We have been working on stabilizing our long-term funding. You know, when I took office, our budget, the budget that I inherited from the former mayor was a 0.5% increase in the school budget. We had come out of years of cutting staff, cutting programs, cutting electives, and it was really critical that we put the budget in perspective and figure out a way to fund our schools. We've been able to do that. We now have increased funding to our schools by 26%. Our budget, operating budget for the schools is $28 million, approaching $30 million, and that doesn't include capital, and that doesn't include benefits to teachers. We have not laid off teachers. We have only increased programs. We finally put world language back, and we need to continue this process. We've put a forecasting model together that will take us through 2022 that identifies that at bare minimum, we can fund 3.5% increases every year to the schools, and then we're trying to add money on top of that to address the structural budget deficit. We had hoped to do 3.5 plus 500,000 this year, but we weren't quite able to get there, but we still are continuing to make strong, steady gains for our school district.
Council Cronin, you have 90 seconds to answer the same question.
Thank you. It's unfortunate that school budgets, really, when you get right down to it, are not standalone budgets. They are on paper, but budgeting in a city like Newburyport is all intertwined. And we have to address that in that manner. For example, languishing in Budget and Finance Committee for almost a year is a proposal to raise the parking fee in the downtown 50 cents an hour. That parking fee would go directly to the schools in my administration. That's almost a $500,000 influx of monies every year into the schools. That's something that can be done. But as I said, it's intertwined with parking garages, draining our parking fund to fund parking garages, and developing our waterfront. A priority for me is the schools. And that priority needs to overlap into the everyday usage of our parking, and it's time we think outside of the box when it comes to school funding. Martha's Vineyard, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Thank you, Council Cronin. Mayor Holliday, you have 30 seconds to rebut if you'd like.
It's unfortunate, but there are rules and regulations regarding the use of revolving funds, and you are not able to use parking revenues to fund our schools. It's just not allowed. So we have to think in a different path and a different stream. And so one of the things that we, I think that with the casinos coming, remember we all voted, well, maybe you didn't, I didn't, but we had the choice to vote for casinos, and that money was supposed to be earmarked for education. These casinos are coming online this year in the state, and hopefully we will see an increase in educational funding out of that stream too.
Councilor Cronin, you have an additional 30 seconds for the
Thank you. Under the Mass Municipal Modernization Bill, which was recently signed by Governor Baker, yes, we can use parking funds. It's changed. We can use them. And by the way, it doesn't have to be a revolving fund for the parking garage and to be a slush fund for parking. We can set that as a budget line item. But last year's 28% increase, unfortunately, is not a true 28%, because that increase had to backfill our loss of school choice.
Thank you. Next question.
On the area of historic preservation, Councilor Cronin, a question for you. The developer who gutted much of the original interior of the 1690 house appears to still be negotiating with the city and the state on how to make amends for the unauthorized changes. How should that dispute be resolved?
It should be resolved quite simply by the developer making the 1690 house right. The 1690 house was improperly gutted, and one individual in town has retrieved and is holding on to many, many artifacts from that house that can be put back in. $40,000 that was offered to the city is just enhancing our reputation from developers that we are a place that you can do what you want and then write a check to pay for your sins. We have to, as a community, not allow this to happen. That's why City Council went out and made a code enforcement officer to address these problems while houses are under construction, while houses are being rehabbed, and in the future, I would hope that this would never, ever happen. The other thing that has to happen is communication between the code enforcement officer, the building inspector, and the planning office, so everybody is on the same page of what the requirements are for a project, what the special conditions are, what the special permit says, and how it's going to be approached. We need more site visits so this will not happen.
Mayor Holliday, you also have 90 seconds.
Thank you. This was a very unfortunate situation, and it was just a series of situations that occurred because the developer had lost its financing. A new developer came in, then they hired another contractor, then there was a site visit with the Mass Historic Commission. None of the information was written down. Then another contractor or GC was on site. So there was a whole series of things that happened which were really, really unfortunate because this is a beautiful building. And I believe that the house should be restored to its original the way it looked originally. And I think that's what the mediation and remediation has to be for this particular situation. But it actually was the mayor's office that hired the zoning enforcement officer, and following that hire, the city council then developed it into a formal ordinance. And I thank them for doing that extra step in terms of the work, because yes, this is a very important position to prevent these kinds of things from happening again in the future. We've hired a terrific zoning enforcement officer who now is already on site working with coordination of the Zoning Board of Appeals decisions, with the Planning Board decisions, and with Historic Commission decisions, and working cooperatively with our planning office. It's really working well, and I look forward to her hours increasing in January to full-time.
Councilor Cronin, you may have an additional 30 seconds if you like.
Thank you. And while we talk about the 1690 house, let us not forget Lime Street, Pine Street, and Strong Street. Each one has their own story. Each one has their own issues. but the common thread behind all of this is that these 4 homes were either gutted, not followed the permits, were built incorrectly, or were torn down with very little notice.
Mayor Holliday, would you like an additional 30 seconds?
I think there's actually more than probably these 4 examples of problems within our city. But I think that as a result of the community outrage, which I think has been important in terms of bringing together support for protecting our historic structures. And it's unfortunate that the local historic district didn't pass, that we could protect High Street, but a new ordinance is coming forward by the City Council, and I thank them for this. It's a very important ordinance to protect High Street and the Ridge.
Thank you. I'm going to move on to the topic of social responsibility, and this question is for the mayor. What's your position regarding equality for all religions, races, and people with disabilities in Newburyport, and how would you create change?
Can you repeat that one more time?
Sure. What's your position regarding equality for all religions, races, and people with disabilities in Newburyport, and how would you create change for the future for these individuals?
We are very fortunate to live in a community with a broad diversity in terms of religion. And I think we've seen that when just recently, after the horrific shootings in Las Vegas, we held a vigil in downtown Newburyport where the Interfaith Council came together. And it was amazing to see the relationship that our interfaith leaders have and the work that they do together to support and enhance all religions across our community. In terms of people with disabilities, we have a disability commission, and it's really evolved over time, and I'm very, very pleased that now we have a range of individuals who themselves have disabilities and bring those skills to the table in terms of being commissioners. And I think that's really important, because who better and who understands more about the struggles than someone who has a disability. So I think that this is important in terms of the work that we've been doing on the Disability Commission. And I also think that when you look of activities and efforts that we've had across the community, for example, we had our first iftar during Ramadan in June at the community center, jumping back to talking about some of the religious organizations and the education and support and information that that raised for our community in terms of understanding the Muslim community.
Newburyport is a welcoming city. No one in our city should live in fear of going to work, going to school, or reaching out for help from the police, the fire, or any other agency in our community. I sit here and I can only give praise to our police department, who is statewide accredited, and they comply with state guidelines. Respect of the individual's rights, whether they're visitors, whether they're residents, is paramount. We, in my opinion, fulfill all obligations and go much further. Now, with ADA, one of our sad issues is our great historic downtown. ADA is, on one hand, great and needed. On the other hand, our historic preservation sometimes prevents ADA compliance in some of the community stores. However, I strongly feel that when we build a public building, such as the Harbor Master Shack, it should be 100% ADA accessible.
Mayor Holliday, would you like 30 seconds for rebuttal?
Certainly, it is a double-edged sword, the fact that we have the most beautiful historic downtown that we were able to preserve, but it also creates challenges for those with disabilities, particularly those with mobility issues. And I think as stores are expanded, restaurants grow, that we are working harder to ensure that there is access for those with disabilities. In terms of the harbor master, the small upstairs, I had to stop.
Councilor Cronin, you may also have 30 seconds of rebuttal if you like.
And just to reinforce, on April 24th, the City Council passed confirming faith and confidence in Newburyport's commitment to civil rights and gratitude towards its Human Rights Commission, and we created an ad hoc committee to explore this. So far, there's been several meetings, one that I attended, one that I had a conflict that night, but that continues to move forward under the leadership of city councilors and community leaders. So that is one great thing that we are continuing to do.
So we're around the 8:30 mark, but I think we got a late start. Would you like to ask one final question? Thank you.
This is for Councilor Cronin first. What do you say to mothers and fathers out there who are concerned about increasing pervasiveness and devastation of drug use everywhere?
Great question. The opioid crisis is at an epidemic level. And it's sad to think that the regional approach that we once embraced in the law enforcement community has sadly disappeared under the current district attorney. We are lucky on an educational standpoint that we have the Beacon Coalition, we have the Pelican Initiative, we have Anna Jakes, we have our professional police and firefighters that are now carrying Narcan, which is unfortunately just a Band-Aid to the disease. What I would like to see and what I really want to demand is a mentoring program with high school students going down and reaching out to impressionable young kids, get police officers into the schools, get more celebrities and or sports stars to come in and tell their tales. We had a fallen Celtic that fell victim to opioids that came to Newburyport. You have other experts that are recovering opioid abusers that can come and reach out to our youth. We have to do this as a community, as a team, and this, quite frankly, breaks all political boundaries, ideas. Mayor Holliday has done a great job with opioids, and we have to continue to do the job as it is today.
Mayor Holliday, you have 90 seconds too.
Thank you, Councilor. I appreciate that comment. And he's right. Parents, I can't tell you the parents I've sat with in my office with tears, telling their story about their loss of their sons or daughters or their struggles with addiction. It is an epidemic, and we've met regionally. We've met to learn about other coalitions, what they're doing. We brought mental health workers together. We now have resources identifying all of the programs that are available in the greater Newburyport area as far as behavioral to help families and their children who are undergoing addiction. We have now men and women's facilities at the Essex Correctional Facility that provides in-house 24-hour holistic wraparound services for those with addictions. But how do we stop this from going? Sure, our first responders are carrying Narcan and they're helping to prevent loss of life, but it is through the Beacon Coalition that I was a founding member of 10 years ago when we wrote our first drug-free community grant. We started at that time dealing with alcohol and tobacco. Who would have thought at the end of 10 years we'd be dealing with opioids? We've hired a prevention coordinator through a 3-year tower grant that's working directly with the Beacon Coalition and bringing out this information on a broad basis. We've developed an asset model, and what that means is that we work with families and students around all the positive characteristics of children, and we continue to have those conversations and move children forward in positive ways that can stop them from experimenting with this awful drug.
Councilor Cronin, you may have an additional 30 seconds if you like.
Thank you. And I'm sorry I missed the Beacon Coalition. That was one of the partners. However, one of the things that we must do as a community is reach out to local doctors, local pharmacists, and stop the gateway of oxycodone, and the movement from that to the IV drug use with heroin. Heroin is more potent today than it was 10 years ago, and autofentanyl will kill you. It's awful. I've seen it.
Mayor Holliday, you may have 30 seconds as well.
We're very fortunate that our city is involved with the Mass Municipal Association, and through their task force on opioid use and abuse, they have been able to work with the governor and make changes in prescribing, and that's really critical too. One of the things that we have done with a program that Stomps is what it's called, where individuals who have problems with heroin can go into our police department, not be arrested, and receive treatment. That's a really important step. But we've also had panels with all of our physicians talking about prescribing, and we need to keep up the dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Cronin and Mayor Holliday. And now we're going to move into the closing statement segment. And Councilor Cronin, you will go first with the closing statement.
Thank you. Again, I want to thank everyone for attending tonight. I'm grateful to have shared my vision, a vision different from the current administration. If I were asked to summarize my priorities, perhaps residents first would come to mind. We need to return to our neighborhoods, from street and sidewalk repair, street flooding, Plum Island erosion, and Merrimack Street safety. Schools need innovative funding. Streets and sidewalks need to be prioritized in an open and public manner. Preservation, sustainability, and affordable housing are quality of life issues that must be at the forefront of our priorities. People move to Newburyport for many reasons. Three consistent themes are location, schools, and quality of life. Quality of life means we need to be affordable to all residents, our children and their children, parents in their golden years and those of us in between. I've already started the process by taking the first steps to address infill, affordable housing, oversight, and preservation. I am proud to have co-sponsored the city's first affordable housing initiative and the Demolition Control Overlay District. Also co-sponsoring the higher bar to slow infill, development, and density that drains our neighborhoods. I strongly supported the creation of the new zoning code enforcement officer, all initiatives not started by the corner office, but by City Council in City Council. I've knocked on 6,000 doors and talked to countless residents in the four corners of our city. Their voices have been clear, their voices have been strong. They want sidewalks fixed, they want streets repaired. They want storm drains that work. They want their schools properly funded. They want special ed fixed. They want our history protected. They don't want a parking garage, and they don't like the present Waterfront West project. They are tired of infill, and they are tired of backroom deals, and they are tired of a city hall that just doesn't listen. I am always put residents first, not developers, special interests, or party politics. No more behind closed door meetings, secret deals, or favoring developers over residents. The projects we undertake reflect the mayor's vision, and the process a reflection of the mayor's leadership. The parking garage is the poster child for the process, a poor process. A systemic failure to produce even basic information, including studies and agreements. Undeniably, many supporting councilors railed about this poor process. Residents deserve better than this. As mayor, I pledge open and timely process and a transparency that will be standard. I will focus on priorities including re-energizing the business park, do more in creative zoning to expand opportunities, and complementing the area with a business-style hotel. I am the candidate to deliver the change Newburyport needs and to take us forward together. I ask for your support and your vote on November 7th, and I thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor Holliday.
Tonight, you've had the opportunity to hear us discuss various issues facing the city. It has been an honor and a privilege serving as your mayor. I love my job, but like the movie title, it's complicated. There is so much involved in daily operations and management of our city. It takes years to develop key leadership positions, advance capital improvements, build strong partnerships, fiscal accountability, and provide an open and inclusive process for our residents. We are elected to serve your priorities. Let me talk about 4 of these I've heard. First, our schools. My administration will provide the consistent leadership and commitment necessary to maintain our momentum and bring the experience needed in hiring a new superintendent. Education of our children will always be a top priority. Second, neighborhoods. As we have made major advances in addressing citywide capital needs, the focus needs to shift to increase work in our neighborhoods, sidewalks, streets, infill, drainage, parks, trees, traffic, and pedestrian safety. Third, affordable housing. Seniors and others on fixed incomes, veterans, those with disabilities, and our children struggle to stay here because of our housing costs. Affordability is a challenge, but we want our tax policies to help seniors stay in their homes, and we are working on a new program to do so. Fourth, our waterfront park. We are so close. Let's get this done. We have worked very hard to build consensus. The NRA property will be transferred to the Waterfront Trust. Cars will be relocated to the parking garage, paid for by the state and federal funds and parking fees. The future of our waterfront also depends on privately held Waterfront West and New England Development and its plans for this adjacent property. We need to get this right. It is critical that everyone remain engaged to assure this development meets our standards and expectations. Newburyport became my home 37 years ago. I met and fell in love with my soulmate, Joe. We married and raised our 2 sons, Jared and PJ. Both were educated K through 12 in the Newburyport school system. You know my work ethic and passion for our city. You know the work I have championed for our city. Have I made missteps? Yes. Can I be perceived as hard? Yes, I can. But you have also seen my compassion and caring. I acknowledge and take responsibility for all city actions. I care deeply about our city, our residents, and our future. The state of our city is strong. Let's stay the course together. To do so, I ask for your vote on November 7th. Thank you.
That didn't